Mossdale Cave Incident. June 24th, 1967. 10 cavers entered the notorious Mossdale Cavern to map unexplored passages. 2 experienced leaders had explored this cave before, giving everyone confidence, despite its reputation for incredibly tight spaces where you could barely stand upright. After hours of crawling through cramped tunnels, 4 cavers realized how brutal the conditions were and returned to the surface. They noticed storm clouds gathering, but nothing seemed alarming. The remaining 6 pushed deeper until they reached the far marathon passage, just 18 by 12 inches with water flowing along the bottom. Everything seemed fine until the surface team noticed heavy rain starting. What began as light drizzle quickly became a downpour. Underground, the cavers watched in horror as water levels began rising rapidly. They immediately abandoned their work and started the 3-hour journey back to the entrance. But it was too late. The surface team discovered a terrifying sight. A wake of floodwater had completely surrounded the cave entrance. The trapped cavers had no idea what was coming for them. Rescuers and hundreds of volunteers worked desperately, pumping water out and oxygen in, hoping the cavers had found air pockets in higher chambers. Unfortunately, all 6 drowned in the rising floodwaters. Shaft Sinkhole tragedy, May 28, 1973. 9 expert divers planned to explore Mount Gambier's Shaft Sinkhole. This unique underwater cave had a tiny opening that led to a lake 20 feet below. A beam of natural sunlight acted as their only navigation guide, visible throughout the main chamber, but not in the deeper side passages. The team agreed to stay within 200 feet depth to remain in the lighted area. But on day 2, 4 divers wanted to break records by diving to 250 feet in the dark western section. This was incredibly dangerous because in 1973, divers used regular air tanks, not modern mixed gases, making them vulnerable to nitrogen narcosis, a drunk-like state caused by pressure. These were experienced open water divers, but cave diving was completely different. As they descended into the western passage, one diver felt the narcosis kicking in and immediately surfaced. Several others followed, but 4 determined divers kept going for the record. Minutes passed, and the surface team worried about their air supply. Rescue divers went down and found only a flashlight and camera on the bottom. No trace of the missing 4. The problem was silt. Their movements had stirred up decades of settled sediment, creating a cloud that reduced visibility to 0. With no way to navigate, depleted air supplies, and severe nitrogen narcosis, all 4 divers became disoriented and drowned in the darkness. Jacob's Well tragedy. November 23rd, 1983. 2 Texas State University students, Richard and Clark, decided to explore Jacob's Well. This underwater hole looks like a harmless 25-foot swimming spot where people try to touch bottom, but it's actually a deadly 4-chamber cave system. The first 2 chambers are manageable, but the third requires squeezing through an incredibly tight space. Beyond that is a 10-foot chamber with a tiny 2-foot tunnel that had already killed 2 people when a rock slide trapped them inside. The students were decent open water divers, but had 0 cave experience. Their instructor, Don, was the expert who recovered those previous bodies. He constantly warned everyone to stay away from Jacob's Well and had even tried sealing the entrance with cement, but other divers reopened it. Don himself nearly died there when gravel trapped him in the tunnel. With empty tanks and water in his lungs, he frantically clawed through debris to escape. When he finally surfaced, The expanding air in his body swelled him to 4 times normal size, rupturing his stomach. Despite knowing these horror stories, Richard and Clark entered Jacob's Well on November 23rd. They reached the 3rd chamber where Richard removed his tank to squeeze through the narrow opening. But when Clark tried to follow, he saw Richard's panicked face. He lost his air supply and was suffocating. Clark quickly sheared his regulator and they began passing air back and forth while trying to escape. They made it through the tight squeeze, but then heard a terrifying sound, their tank clanking against a wall. Not only were they going the wrong direction, but their air was nearly gone. They'd entered the false chimney, a tunnel that looks like it leads to the surface, but actually dead ends. Clark managed to swim 75 feet to the surface in one breath, but Richard remained behind and drowned. Gollum's Cave, August 18th, 2005. 5 friends decided to explore Gollum Cave, nicknamed the Cave of Death. They arrived at 3 a.m. with one friend staying outside as lookout. To enter, they had to crawl through a small water-filled passage. The cave then forked left and right. They went left to another innocent-looking pool. But this pool hid a deadly secret, an underwater tunnel to another section of the cave. The submerged tunnel was only 3 to 4 feet wide, meaning only one person could swim through at a time. Each had to hold their breath for about 15 feet underwater to reach the other side. One by one, they plunged in and successfully made it to a chamber with just 3 feet of breathing space above water. The friend outside grew worried when hours passed with no sounds or lights from the cave. He entered but found nothing, so he called experienced cavers and then police. Inside, the 4 friends had encountered bad air, a deadly atmospheric condition where oxygen drops and carbon dioxide rises. This toxic environment makes it nearly impossible to think clearly, move properly, or hold your breath effectively. They tried to escape one at a time through the underwater tunnel, but the first person couldn't find the exit hole before running out of breath. The bad air had destroyed her ability to hold her breath and think straight. After a minute, the second person went in to help and also got trapped. This continued until all 4 were stuck in the underwater passage. Police pumped in oxygen and pumped out water while families waited anxiously outside. But it was too late. All 4 friends drowned in the tunnel. The cave was permanently sealed with cement afterward. What other dangerous locations would you like to learn about? Let me know in the comments below.